In 1954, Marlon Brando had a 5'9" fighter's build and trained with real boxers for On the Waterfront. By 1990, a Los Angeles courtroom heard testimony about a man who needed help to stand. Something got to him first, and it was not the work. His friends blamed Hollywood. His housekeeper knew better. She was the one buying the groceries. Number 14 he ordered by the sackful from a drive-through window in the middle of the night with the headlights off. Number 3 he ate standing at an open refrigerator door with his bare hands. And number 1 is the food his own staff were told to lock away from him. Behind a padlock, he learned to defeat with a butter knife. Brando earned more per minute than any actor alive, and by the end, nobody in that house would tell him no. Hit subscribe and let us count down the 20 grotesque foods Marlon Brando devoured until his heart could not carry him. Number 20, cornflakes and cold milk. Long before Hollywood, Brando was a boy in Omaha, Nebraska, in a house where his mother drank and the mornings were nobody's responsibility. Cornflakes were what a child fed himself. A box cost a dime and needed no adult and no permission. He kept eating them for 70 years. Guests on Mulholland found him at the counter at odd hours with a mixing bowl of it. Not a bowl, a mixing bowl. Refined corn hits the bloodstream faster than table sugar. He was not eating breakfast. He was eating a memory. Number 19, liverwurst on white bread. New York, the late 1940s. Brando was 23, sleeping on other people's floors and studying with Stella Adler, broke the way young actors are broke. Liverwurst was the answer. Ground pork liver, fat, and onion, sold by the slab off delicatessen counters on the Lower East Side, laid between 2 slices of white bread with mustard. It fed a man for a nickel. He ate it every day for years. Liver is among the most cholesterol-dense foods a butcher sells, and liverwurst adds sodium and rendered fat on top. He could have stopped in 1951. He never did. Number 18, bananas by the bunch. Brando bought bananas the way other households buy bread. Whole hands of them, 6 and 8 at a time, ripening on every flat surface. He would work through a bunch in a sitting. He told people they were healthy, and in the strict sense, he was right. The problem was never the banana. 8 of them is over 800 calories of sugar eaten between meals, on top of everything else on this list, by a man whose pancreas was already losing the argument. He was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. The healthiest thing on this list did him damage too, because he could not eat one of anything. Number 17, Chinese takeout ordered by the bag. By the 1970s, the money was absurd and the appetite had scaled with it. Brando did not order a dish, he ordered the menu. Chow mein, egg rolls, sweet and sour pork, fried rice, arriving in brown sacks that came out of the car in armfuls, spread across a table meant for guests who were not coming. A full order in 1975 ran $15, less than a valet tip to him. He ate standing up, out of the cartons. The sodium alone runs to several days of what a modern cardiologist would allow. There was never a plate. A plate would have been a limit. Number 16, drive-through cheeseburgers. Los Angeles is a city built for a man who wants to eat in private, and Brando used it that way. He would take a car out late and work a circuit of drive-through windows across the valley, ordering at each one so no single teenager in a headset ever saw the whole order. A cheeseburger cost 50 cents. The economics were never the point. The point was that a drive-through does not look at you and does not count. He ate them in the passenger seat, then had the car cleaned out before it went back in the garage. The most famous face on earth had found the one place in America where nobody asked him what he was doing. Number 15, hot dogs. Boiled soft, slid into a white bun, a stripe of mustard, gone in 3 bites. Hot dogs cost pennies and required nothing of anyone. Accounts from his household describe him eating them cold as often as hot, 4 and 5 at a time, standing with the refrigerator door open. Processed meat of that era was mechanically recovered pork and beef, bound with starch and loaded with nitrates. He was eating them because eating was what his hands did when the rest of him had nothing to do. Number 14, the midnight sack order. Here is number 14, the one he ordered by the sackful with the headlights off. There are accounts, from people who worked for him and from more than one biographer, of Brando pulling up to a fast food window in the dead of night and ordering 20 burgers at once, not for a household, for himself, over the following hours. 20 burgers is north of 6,000 calories in a sack that cost less than a restaurant appetizer. A man does not order 20 of anything at 3 in the morning because he is hungry. He orders 20 because he has found the one thing that reliably works. Number 13, peanut butter from the jar. No bread, no knife, a spoon, and sometimes not even that. Peanut butter was a constant in every house he lived in, from the New York years to the last decade on Mulholland. He ate it by the jar, sitting down with one and finishing it. A jar is roughly 3,000 calories, almost entirely fat and sugar, engineered to be as close to impossible to stop eating as a legume can be made. It cost under $1 and required no cook and no witness. His housekeeper started buying it in smaller jars. He bought it himself. First, pattern break. Here is what the studios knew and would not say out loud. Marlon Brando's weight was a line item. His contracts were negotiated with his body as an open variable, and productions were built around whatever version of him showed up. The Godfather worked because Coppola cast the heaviness as authority. And then there was Apocalypse Now. Brando arrived in the Philippines in 1976 to play Colonel Kurtz, considerably heavier than the role had been written for, and without having read the source material. Coppola shot him in near darkness, lit him from above, kept him half submerged, and cut around the body. The performance is extraordinary. It is also a director building a cave around an actor so an audience cannot see what has happened to him. Nobody in that industry ever sat Brando down. They lit him differently, paid him more, and moved on. Hollywood did not have a problem with what Brando was doing to himself. Hollywood had a lighting problem, and it solved it. Number 12, corn on the cob by the dozen. There was a Nebraska boy under all of it, and corn is what Nebraska tastes like. Brando ate corn in quantities people remembered. Boiled, rolled in butter, salted heavily, eaten one ear after another until the pile of stripped cobs became the thing everyone at the table was trying not to look at. A dozen ears was pocket change, even in the 1950s. Butter is where the damage lives. A generously buttered ear carries the fat of a small meal, and he was not eating one ear. It came from the state he spent his life running away from, and he could not leave it alone. Number 11, raw fish and coconut on Tetiaroa. In 1966, Brando bought an atoll. Tetiaroa is a ring of 13 small islands north of Tahiti, and he spent decades there, at a distance from Los Angeles that was the entire point. The food was Polynesian, and on paper, the healthiest of his life. Raw fish cured in lime juice and coconut milk, fish pulled from the lagoon that morning. But coconut cream is among the most saturated fat-dense foods on Earth, and Brando ate the Tahitian diet the way he ate every diet, at 3 times the volume it was built for. He crossed the Pacific to get away from the thing that was killing him. He brought it with him in his own hands. Number 10, frozen pizza. The last 20 years on Mulholland were solitary, and the food got correspondingly convenient. Frozen pizza was part of it. $4 a box, 20 minutes from freezer to plate, with no human being involved at any stage. He would cook 2. Processed cheese, refined flour, and cured meat deliver salt, fat, and fast carbohydrate in near perfect proportion to do maximum damage. He was not eating it because it was good. He was eating it because it asked nothing of him. Number 9, whole cheesecakes, not a slice. The cake. Accounts from his later years describe cheesecakes bought whole and eaten across a night, sometimes in one sitting, with a fork out of the box, sitting up in bed with the television on. A commercial cheesecake runs to 4,000 or 5,000 calories, roughly a stick of butter and a cup of sugar per slice. He had made Streetcar. He had made Waterfront. He had changed what film acting was, and he was in bed at 3 in the morning with a cake box on his lap. Second pattern break. Here is the arithmetic. Nobody around him would run out loud. In 1951, filming a Streetcar named Desire, Brando was 27 on a boxer's training regimen with a body he had built deliberately and used as an instrument. By Apocalypse Now, in 1976, he was widely reported at somewhere between 250 and 300 pounds. By the 1990 proceedings that followed his son Christian's case, court records described a man well over 300 pounds with significant difficulty moving. That is not a diet. That is a 40-year trajectory in one direction, with no year in which it meaningfully reversed for long. And the medicine kept pace. Type 2 diabetes, joint failure under load, congestive heart failure. Everyone has a documented relationship with sustained obesity, and everyone arrived in the order the textbooks predict. Brando was not an ignorant man. He read constantly, and in his own autobiography he wrote about his eating with a clarity that is difficult to read. He knew exactly what he was doing. He did it for 50 years anyway. Number 8. Pancakes and syrup. Stacked high, butter melting between the layers, syrup poured until it pooled on the plate. Pancakes are flour, sugar, and fat. Syrup is sugar in liquid form. The combination is one of the fastest routes into the bloodstream a kitchen can produce. Brando ate them at any hour. Breakfast had stopped being a time of day in that house. A stack of 6 carries well over 1,000 calories, and for a diabetic, it is close to the worst possible plate. He knew that. It changed nothing, because by then the doctors were simply another set of people telling him no. Number 7. Cold cuts, standing at the open door. This is the one people who worked for him described most often, and the least dramatic item on this list. Brando ate standing at the refrigerator. Ham, bologna, salami, cheese, whatever was on the shelf, pulled out of the packet and eaten with his fingers, with the door hanging open and the light on his face. Deli meat is salt and nitrate and rendered fat, and in that volume, it is a load a healthy pancreas would struggle with. The staff learned to keep the refrigerator stocked because an empty one produced a worse outcome than a full one. That is the sentence that explains the whole house. Number 6. Candy bars, hidden. By the last decade, the people around Brando were managing his food, and Brando was managing them back. There are accounts of chocolate bars turning up where they had no business being. In drawers, in a jacket, behind books. A candy bar cost 50 cents. This was never about access to food. He owned an island. It was about somebody finally saying no to him, 40 years too late, and him having no intention of accepting it. The greatest actor of his generation, hiding sweets in his own house from people he employed. Number 5. Whole roast chicken. When there was a cook, the bird came out whole and did not get carved for a table. Brando would work through it with his hands, the skin first, then the thighs, then everything, the way a hungry man eats when nobody is watching, except that by then, people were always watching and it had stopped mattering to him. A roast chicken with the skin on runs to around 2,000 calories. He would eat one, and then look at what else was on the counter. Any food would do. The food was interchangeable. That was the tell. Third pattern break. Here is the part the tributes left out. Marlon Brando spent the last years of his life on supplemental oxygen. The lungs went first. Pulmonary fibrosis, a scarring of the tissue that makes drawing breath progressively harder until it cannot be done at all. But it did not arrive alone. He was carrying congestive heart failure, a heart too weak to move blood at the rate the body demands. He was carrying type 2 diabetes. He was carrying liver cancer. He was carrying, physically, a body that 4 decades of this list had built. On the 1st of July, 2004, Marlon Brando died at UCLA Medical Center of respiratory failure. He was 80 years old. 80 is not a young death, and this is where the story refuses to be simple. He was not taken early the way Elvis was, or Babe Ruth. He lasted. What he lost was not years. What he lost was the use of them. The last 2 decades of the most physically expressive actor in the history of American film were spent largely in one house, unable to move well, eating. He got the time. He just could not do anything with it. Number 4, whatever was on someone else's plate. Guests at Brando's table reported a habit that unsettled them. He would finish his own food and then, mid-conversation, without breaking eye contact, reach across and take food off theirs. Not as a joke, and not as a request. Some found it charming. He could make almost anything charming, and he used that his whole life as a shield. Others understood exactly what they were watching. The habit turns up again and again in people who were hungry as children. He was in his 60s, worth a fortune, and still taking food off other people's plates in case it was not there later. Number 3, the refrigerator with his hands. Here is number 3, the one he ate standing at the open door with his bare hands. By the final years, the household had rules, and the rules did not hold. The accounts are consistent. Brando in the kitchen in the small hours, refrigerator open, eating out of containers with his fingers, working through whatever the shelves held before going back to bed. His own family have spoken publicly about the difficulty of those years. There is nothing about this that is funny, and this channel is not going to pretend otherwise. This is a man in his 70s, one of the most gifted people who ever stood in front of a camera, alone in a dark kitchen at 4 in the morning, eating with his hands because somewhere underneath 80 years, there was still a boy in Omaha pouring his own cereal because nobody else was going to. Number 2, fried chicken, by the bucket. It was cheap, it was hot, it arrived in a container sized for a family, and it required no fork and no company. Brando ate it the way he ate everything by then, which was completely. A family bucket carries around 3,000 calories, almost half of it fat. There's a photograph that circulates of Brando in the last decade, and people look at it and feel a kind of vertigo, trying to square it with a young man in a torn shirt shouting up a staircase in 1951. Both of those men ate the same way. Only one of them was still burning it off. Number 1, ice cream and the padlock. Here is number 1, the food they finally locked away from him. Ice cream is the most consistently reported item across every account of Brando's eating, from every decade and every person who spent time in his houses. He ate it by the pint and by the tub, straight out of the container with a spoon, usually late, usually alone. Not a dessert, not after a meal. A category of its own, entered several times a night. A pint of premium ice cream is around 1,000 calories of cream and sugar. He did not eat a pint. And in the last years, with a diabetic diagnosis on the chart and a heart that was failing, the people who worked for Marlon Brando did the only thing left to do. They locked the freezer. They put a chain and a padlock on a kitchen appliance in the home of the most celebrated actor in America because it was the only remaining way to stop him. And he got into it anyway. Accounts describe him working the lock or finding the key, and the household waking to find the chain hanging open and the containers empty. That is the image to hold on to. Not the torn shirt in 1951. Not Kurtz in the darkness. A man of 70-something in a silent house at 3 in the morning, breaking into his own freezer with a butter knife. Here is my challenge. Look back over this list and try to find one exotic thing on it, one rare ingredient, one food that required money. There is not one. Cornflakes, liverwurst, bananas, hot dogs, peanut butter, pancakes, ice cream. This is the shopping list of a poor household in the American Midwest in 1935, and it never changed, not through the Oscars, not through the fortune, not through the island in the Pacific. Marlon Brando got everything a person can get, and he spent 60 years eating what a lonely boy in Omaha could reach without asking an adult for help. Tell me in the comments which one you would have taken away from him first, the freezer, or the drive-thru, or the jar of peanut butter. Because these were not just foods. They were a message he sent himself every night for half a century. Nobody is coming. Feed yourself. And in the end, that is what wore him out.